Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.
Listen to me, listen to your don't listen to anything they say.
In the 1950s, a weapon was invented that has become more powerful than America's deadliest weapons of mass destruction. It is the weapon of mass deception, and it is right in our own living rooms. The hypnotizing world of picture television brings us the news of the world through two central news agencies called Reuters and the Associated Press. The Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s, which later bought the Associated Press and made the Rothschild family owners of the world's largest central news services. To the present day, the world depends on these Rothschild-owned central news services as their main source of news and information. In his book called Who Owns the TV Networks, author Eustace Mullins claims that the major TV networks, radio stations, newspapers, and publishing empires are controlled by the Rothschild, Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan money cartels through their corporate conglomerates. The bankster-owned media conglomerates include weapons manufacturers General Electric and Westinghouse, which profit from promoting wars. Their man in Washington is head of the FCC Federal Communications Commission, and his name is Michael Powell, the son of Colin Powell. Michael Powell was put in charge of changes to the media monopoly rules and who can own what. Joining public opposition to Michael Powell's FCC deregulation policies, Senator Byron Dorgan had this to say.
Seldom have I seen a regulatory agency cave in so completely to the big economic interests. That's exactly what happened today with the FCC rules. And Chairman Powell kept suggesting slight modifications. It's not slight at all. This is a big deal. It's going to affect what the American people can see, can hear, can read. And let me emphasize something that was in your setup piece. After what the FCC did today, it is likely, in fact, that in big American cities we will see the same company own the newspaper, 3 television stations, 8 radio stations, and the cable system in that city, all under one company.
The one thing Donald Trump has ever been right about is that he's unelectable.
We are in the business of kicking candidates out of the race.
This Ron Paul is going to destroy this party.
Paul's doing very well out in Iowa, and I don't think that's going to thrill a lot of the Republican establishment.
Right now, live, right next to the bus behind us, Ron Paul is speaking, and 7 of the candidates are here today. We have live pictures of Ron Paul, but you know what? We're talking about Sarah Palin, and we're talking about Rick Perry, the 2 people not in the race yet, Drew.
And guess what, Paul? If you get video of Sarah Palin or get a soundbite from her, bring that back to us. You can hold the Ron Paul stuff.
We have a top tier. It is Mitt Romney, Rick Perry, and Michelle Bachmann.
We have a new top tier, and it's Perry, Mitt Romney, and Bachmann.
There's now a top tier in this race, at least for now, of Romney, Perry, and Bachmann.
I mean, I think that's fair to say. Really fair to say? You're not forgetting, I don't know, anyone, say an ideologically consistent 12-term congressman who came within less than 200 votes of winning the straw poll? Isn't anyone going to give that gentleman a little love?
There's a top tier now of Bachman and Perry and Romney, and, you know, we haven't mentioned, and we should.
Thank you.
We haven't mentioned, and we should, Rick Santorum, who did really surprisingly well for the amount of money and resources he had.
Rick Santorum? He didn't get half of what Ron Paul got. He lost to the guy who lost so bad he dropped out of the race. Santorum?
We're looking at Mitt Romney, who continues to be the front runner, but we have Rick Perry as well, and now Michelle Bachmann. Let's not count out John Huntsman, though.
What? John Huntsman? Huntsman got 69 votes. This pretending Ron Paul doesn't exist for some reason has been going on for weeks.
A new Gallup survey showing Rick Perry running second to Mitt Romney, knocking down Iowa favorite Michelle Bachmann to fourth.
Behind who? Fourth behind who? How did Libertarian Ron Paul become the 13th floor in a hotel? Why? What's wrong with... He is Tea Party patient zero. All that small government grassroots business, he planted that grass. These other folks, they're just moral majorities in a tri-cornered hat. Ron Paul's the real deal, and Fox News should love this guy.
Here's what you're tweeting me at Jerry Willis FBN. The only real candidate is Ron Paul. Come on, Jerry, you know this by now. Everyone else is for endless wars and big government. And Frank writes, he is not getting the attention he should. However, I do not think he will be the last one standing. And Jim says this, I believe he is. His plans for our government are basic, simple, and easy to implement. No story there for the media. Question tonight, is Ron Paul being ignored by the media? Log on to jerrywillis.com. Take the poll on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll share the results at the end of tonight's show. Earlier this hour, we debated whether presidential candidate Ron Paul is getting enough attention. He basically tied with Michelle Bachmann in this weekend's straw poll, but she got all the news coverage, not to mention his Texas colleague Rick Perry stealing all the headlines. So we asked on jerrywillis.com, is Ron Paul being ignored by the media? 97% of you said yes, he is. 3% said no. And listen to this. We had voters from 26 different countries voting in that poll.
Years have finally caught up with the candidate. Paul's message hasn't changed, but the urgency of what he's saying has increased dramatically. And it seems like this time more people may be listening. He came within an eyelash of finishing first in the Iowa straw poll, less than 200 votes behind Michelle Bachmann out of nearly 17,000 votes cast. Again, a fact that was largely overlooked by the mainstream media. Michelle Bachmann has no chance of being the next president of the United States. Maybe Ron Paul should be. Here's the question. Is Ron Paul the only grown-up running for president on the Republican side? Jarrett writes, yes. The real question is, are Americans ready to put on their big boy pants and accept some of the truths Ron Paul has been telling us for decades? We're broke. Our wars are a racket. The Fed is destroying our currency. The Congress is ripping us off. The threat of terrorism has been exaggerated. We're never going to agree on everything, so let's focus on agreeing on one thing, that we should all be free. Andy writes, the only grown-up, I don't know. What I do know is he gets little or no media coverage even after he practically tied Michelle Bachmann in the Ames straw poll, and that's her home turf. Tony writes, not only is Dr. Paul the only grown-up in the race, he's the only candidate who is mature enough to tell us the truth, even if it's unpleasant. After listening to him, I'm reminded that there are still good leaders out there who actually want us to be free and live in peace. Refreshing to hear an honest, unscripted, heartfelt candidate who speaks passionately and truthfully about the issues that matter to us all. Tommy writes from North Carolina on Facebook, Ron Paul is not the only adult in the Republican race, just the only honest one. And Tony in Topeka writes, he might not be the only adult, but I can't think of another. By the way, Jack, I think the real question should be, why is the media not covering Congressman Paul? Jon Stewart did an amazing piece on his Daily Show last night. Sometimes I wonder whose side the media is on.
Iran does not have an air force that can come here, just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they have nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
What's with the smirk and the eye roll? The guy, the crowd goes nuts and you do one of these. There goes crazy Uncle Ron, babbling about the unsustainability of multiple wars.
Bad about this. And people countries that you put sanctions on, you are more likely to fight them. I say a policy of peace is free trade, stay out of their internal business, don't get involved in these wars, and just bring our troops home.
Congressman Paul, in the civilian courts, could you please tell Congressman Paul why he's wrong?
Well, because simply terrorists who commit acts against United States citizens, people who are from foreign countries who do that, do not have any right on under our Constitution to Miranda rights. We've also seen that Guantanamo Bay has yielded significant information. In fact, we've learned that that led to the capture and the killing of bin Laden. This is a tool that we need to have in order to be able to prosecute the new type of war, the new type of warfare, and the new type of terrorists that this country is dealing with.
Seconds, Congressman Paul.
Well, I think she turns our rule of law on its head. She says that the terrorists don't deserve protection under our courts, but therefore a judgment has to be made. They're ruled a terrorist. Who rules them a terrorist? I thought our courts recognized that you had to be tried, and we've done this. And we've brought individuals back from Pakistan and other places. We've given them a trial in this country. Over 300, or at least near 300, we tried and put them in prison. So this idea that we have to turn on its head and reject the rule of law, we already are at the point where this administration, please let me finish. I have to say, and this administration already has accepted the principle that when you assume somebody is a terrorist, they can be targeted for assassination, even American citizens. That affects all of us eventually. You don't want to translate our rule of law into a rule of mob rule.
Senator Santorum.
Our country has defaulted 3 different times. They promised at one time during the Civil War to pay in gold. They refused to. In the 30s, they promised to pay in gold. They refused to. And then in 1971, they promised to pay foreigners in gold. We defaulted, and we stuck it to them. So once again, we're going to default. We're defaulting every single day. That's what your prices are doing. Prices go up, they're defaulting on your money. So we need to look at the Federal Reserve System.
By active duty military personnel by the candidate. Herman Cain, $6,223. Now remember, these numbers are coming from reports that may be, if anything, overstating these numbers at this point. But Mitt Romney, not even coming up to Cain there for active duty military contributions, $5,000. Michelle Bachmann, bit of a late start this round, okay. $2,550. Newt Gingrich, whose campaign is imploding, I don't know if that was by accident there, $1,025. Pawlenty, all of $250 from active duty military. Rick Santorum, $250 also. Gary Johnson, sadly, none for his position. Total there of those other candidates, so to speak, $15,398. Sure sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Well, there's one other candidate who you might have noticed. Well, I don't know if you're watching the mainstream media. You might not have noticed that he was omitted from that list. Let's see, how much did Ron Paul get in this last quarter from active duty military? Oh my gosh, $36,739.79. No surprise, actually, that this was the case, far outstripping all other Republican presidential candidates put together, as was the case 4 years ago. But let's see, let's compare this to, who's the other guy running for president in 2012? Oh yeah, $28,833.99. for the president himself.